In the early 1840s, California was a distant outpost that only a handful of Americans had seen. The sleepy port that would become San Francisco had just a few hundred residents. One of the wealthiest people in the region was John Sutter, an affable Swiss immigrant who came here in 1839, intent on building his own private empire. Sutter soon built this fort, amassed 12,000 head of cattle, and took on hundreds of workers. His most prolific crop was debt. He owed money to creditors as far away as Russia. But Sutter was a man with a dream of a vast agricultural domain that he would control. By the mid-1840s, more and more Americans were trickling into California by wagon and ship. Sutter welcomed the newcomers, more subject for his self-styled kingdom. But Sutter had no idea that the trickle would become a flood, a deluge of humanity that would destroy his dream. Sutter's undoing began here, 50 miles northeast of his fort, on the American River. In late 1847, James Marshall and about 20 men were sent here by Sutter to build a sawmill to provide lumber for Sutter's growing ranch. The sawmill was nearly complete when a glint of something caught Marshall's eye. It was January 24th, 1848.
I reached my hand down and picked it up. It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold. The piece was about half the size and shape of a pea. Then I saw another.
After making the greatest find in the history of the West, Marshall and the other workers went back to work. But they kept stumbling upon more gold, nugget after nugget. Still in disbelief, Marshall took samples back to Sutter's fort. Here, in this room, Sutter and Marshall tested the shiny metal as best they could. A tattered encyclopedia gave them clues. It was gold, they concluded. But neither man was happy about it. Sutter was building an agricultural fiefdom. He didn't want the competition that gold might bring. And Marshall had a sawmill to build. Gold hunters would just get in his way. So they made a pact to keep the discovery a secret. It wasn't long before stories of gold filtered into the surrounding countryside. But there was no race to the American River, not yet. The news of Marshall's gold was just another fantastic tale, too unlikely to be believed. The gold rush needed a booster, and Sam Brannan was the man. A San Francisco merchant, Brannan was a skilled craftsman of hype. Eventually, the gold rush would make him the richest person in California, but Sam Brannan never mined for gold. He had a different scheme, a plan he set into motion by running through the streets of San Francisco shouting about Marshall's discovery. As proof, Brannan held up a bottle of gold dust. It was a master stroke that would spark the rush for gold and make Brannan rich.
When he started racing through the streets yelling gold, gold in the American River, he wasn't planning on digging for it, he was planning on selling shovels. And the first person who sold shovels got a lot more gold than the person who had to dig for it.
Brannan keenly understood the laws of supply and demand. His wild run through San Francisco came just after he had purchased every pickaxe, pan, and shovel in the region. A metal pan that sold for 20 cents a few days earlier was now available from Brannan for $15. In just 9 weeks, he made $36,000. By 1848, whispers of a gold strike had drifted eastward across the country. But few Easterners believed. It was an age when rumors were discounted and government officials were revered. The gold discovery needed validation, and President James Polk delivered just that in early December 1848.
The accounts of the abundance of gold in that territory are of such extraordinary character as would scarcely command belief, were they not corroborated by authentic reports of officers in the public service.
Polk's confirmation reached deep into the soul of millions. His simple words were a powerful call to action. Farmers left their fields. Merchants closed their shops. Soldiers left their posts and made plans for California. Newspapers flamed the fires. Horace Greeley of the New York Tribune.
Fortune lies upon the surface of the earth, as plentiful as the mud in our streets. We look for an addition within the next 4 years equal to at least $1,000 million to the gold in circulation.
By early 1849, gold fever was an epidemic.
Stories in the Richmond, Indiana paper was an example of big ad. In the Richmond Palladium of 1849. This guy was selling salve. He got it in a bottle. And for $2.50 or $5 or something, you could get this bottle of salve. And all you did was rub it all over your body, get up on the top of the mountain and roll down, and all the gold stuck to you. And guaranteed you by the time you got to the bottom of with one roll, you'd have enough gold when you scraped it off to come back and live happily ever after. That was all you needed. And he sold 2 types of salve, one for gold and one for silver. If you wanted to get some gold and silver, you used the other. Now, this is the type of thing that caused these young men of the day, the 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys who the big end of the gold rush was in the first years, to go because, my gosh, I can live forever and happy the rest of my life. I can go out there and get money and go back.
There is an account in someone's diary of some French men who came with their wives to find gold, and they believed that the gold was in the rivers. This is what they were told, and they did not want to get wet, so they brought these giant rakes with them so that they could rake the rivers and get the gold out without getting wet. And they brought their wives along, and they brought for their wives little embroidered stools for them to sit on and little silver tongs so that they could sit on their little stools and pick up the little nuggets and amuse themselves while the men were raking the river.